The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode.
It's the summer of 93 at 30.
Welcome back again to the Brandon Peters Show as we are marching toward in our final month here of music video installments of the summer of 93 at 30. And back here from the Saturday Evening Post on a Friday, it's Troy Brownfield.
1 day early.
1 day early. All right. The movies this week, Troy, that we discussed on Monday are That Night, which is a coming of age film with Juliette Lewis, C. Thomas Howell, and a very young Eliza Dushku. Cameo appearance by Katherine Heigl. She's actually in 2 movies this summer as a little kid. My Boyfriend's Back, The Fugitive, and The Meteor Man. Quick thoughts on all 4 of those.
Never seen That Night. Meteor Man is a better idea than it sometimes gets credit for.
Mm-hmm.
And My Boyfriend's Back, I remember it primarily because, zombie stuff, but also Tracy Lynn / Lind from Fright Night 2.
Okay, yeah.
And but the real winner of that pack is obviously The Fugitive, which hell of an action movie.
Probably the best. I mean, there's Jurassic Park in this summer, but Fugitive might be the best movie. I don't know. Jurassic Park's a weird one because I'm kind of like Aaron Newerth on it with it, where he says it's the best movie that's not one of my favorite movies. Like,
oh
yeah,
I get what you're saying with that.
Yeah. But The Fugitive
Jurassic
is
Park
rock solid. Yeah.
Jurassic Park is a bit of a weird one because, there are things about Jurassic Park that are unassailably great.
Yeah.
And revolutionary and whatnot, but it's not necessarily one I go back to much. I mean, I watched it a couple of times with the kids when the new one started.
Yeah, it's a movie where you're excited to show your kids it because you were excited for it back then, but you're never top 10 of all time. You're never. It's yeah. Now if you're doing top dinosaur movies of all time, it might fall.
Yeah, but I find the Fugitive to be kind of an eminently rewatchable film.
Mm-hmm.
There's just as far as something you can drop in on if it's on TV or whatnot. But a lot of great set pieces to it, from the train to the dam to
the third build, like Julianne Moore, who's in it for 4 minutes.
wasn't the thing with Julianne Moore, she was supposed to have a more developed role, but they didn't want anything approaching that might be a romantic interest
I think that's what it was. Yeah.
But yeah, Julianne Moore is weirdly in it for just a few minutes, but and the great Andreas Katsulas from Babylon 5.
Yes,
is the one-armed man.
Yes.
And I don't remember the names of the actors who play the 2 Chicago cops, but I have rarely hated TV or movie cops more than those 2 assholes.
Oh gosh. True. Oh yeah. No, that movie, yeah, it's good. It's a good spin on taking we talk about IPs being all the things, but 90s had a thing where we're gonna make those old TV shows into hit blockbuster movies, and this is probably the best of it all.
Yeah. You've got the top-notch ones, Addams Family, this, and Mission Impossible.
Yeah, well, I forgot Mission Impossible.
But they're a sequence, right? Addams Family is first, and then this, and then Mission Impossible. And I dare say that it is the fact that Addams Family worked first, might have opened the door for some of the others. They're probably developed at similar periods of time.
Because you also get Flintstones and stuff too. So yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't always work, but Beverly Hillbillies. There's a lot. I mean, that would be an interesting thing to look at, is the 90s IP mining of classic TV.
Yeah.
Night the movie.
A Car 54, Where Are You? That got turned into a movie. There's a lot of ones that they took the swing. They didn't redo it on TV. They literally just made a movie of it. And they weren't even thinking sequels back then. They were just let's just make a good movie out of this IP. And then it did really well, a sequel would happen. And Fugitive got a sequel.
And we should probably mention this is the movie that legitimately makes Tommy Lee Jones, who was already a good established actor,
Oh
a
yeah.
movie star. You know, because
Mhm.
he's the male lead in Coal Miner's Daughter.
Right.
13 years before this, he's in freaking Love Story.
Oh, he's in Rolling Thunder. Yeah, he has like a bit of a like a smaller part in big things, but like having this like B movie career too. And then the director is Andrew Davies, who does The Fugitive, but he'd worked with him. He did Under Siege with him,
Yeah.
playing it back. So he was climbing, and then this is just a fun part. This is a scene stealer part. This is like, yeah, this is. I don't know that this part gets nominated for an Oscar nowadays, but this was the type of stuff back then that in a blockbuster, which Fugitive was up for Best Picture too. We should mention.
Yeah. Well, hell, two of his scenes are critical moments in the trailer. The
Right?
hard target search of every
I
outhouse,
don't
outhouse,
care.
and I don't care. Yeah. They're
Yeah.
big trailer moments.
Yeah. I mean, he just shows up and you're like, all right. Like it's just boom. It's one of those great walls. And these kind of movies would be his bread and butter throughout because he'd have like him and Morgan Freeman. Like if you couldn't get Tommy Lee Jones, you got Morgan Freeman. You these little adult thriller movies. Because he had like Double Jeopardy.
Yeah.
Was another one of his. He got Two-Face, sadly, didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah.
Decided to compete with Jim Carrey.
Oh,
But
we did get that great quote, that story that Jim Carrey tells. There, Tommy Lee Jones tells him he cannot sanction his buffoonery. People on the internet, look that up. It's delightful. It's a great
oh my gosh.
Jim Carrey story.
Oh,
Yeah, so good stuff in terms of that for sure.
yeah. So today we're here to discuss Runaway Train. It's the third and final single from Soul Asylum's sixth studio album, Grave Dancers Union, an album that peaked at number 11 on the Billboard 200, went 2 times platinum. The song itself went 2 times platinum as well. Landed number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. Did better on the mainstream charts. Number 2 and number 3. Or no, well, I wrote mainstream twice. It did number 2 on the mainstream. And then I think it did number 3 on the mainstream. It did like rock charts number 2 or something like that. It won a Grammy for best rock song, beating out Aerosmith's Crying and Living on the Edge, Lenny Kravitz, Are You Gonna Go Away, and Meatloaf's I'd Do Anything for Love, parentheses, but I won't do that. So Troy, you know a lot more about Soul Asylum than me. So where are they at this time and this song?
Okay, let me throw a personal aside. First Soul Asylum record I got was the one that precedes this, called And the Horse They Rode In On, which I had heard part of from someone else. I got it from the record store cutout bin for a couple of bucks because I knew about it. They had previously had several singles before this. Soul Asylum is a Minneapolis band that was contemporary of one side of town was the Paisley Park side, where you had Prince and the Revolution, Morris Day and the Time, Vanity, the different groups, the Family, etc., associated with Prince. The other side was the Replacements, Husker Du, and Soul Asylum. They were all coming up at the same time, and the two music scenes would cross paths at a place called the Avenue and the Avenue Annex. So sometimes you might have at some point in the 80s gone in and found Prince and the Replacements playing different slots at different parts of the same building, which is a crazy ass thing to think about. So, Soul Asylum had made a few records at this point. Their song Sometime to Return was on the first MTV 120 Minutes Nevermind the Mainstream compilation, where they were compiling songs from bands that they were showing on 120 Minutes on MTV hadn't broken through yet. So they're on that first edition of this with like Robin Hitchcock and Mission UK and other acts. They were being played on 120 Minutes on MTV, which I now realize, for context, kids, when played music videos. In the late 80s, they had a spate of devoting shows to specific genres. Headbangers Ball for Metal, Yo MTV Raps for hip hop, and then 120 Minutes. Also, there'd been a show briefly called MTV Postmodern. 120 Minutes ran late night Sunday nights and featured alternative acts, and this is pre-Nirvana. So
Right.
Soul Asylum had existed for a few years. In the aftermath of Nirvana, there were a lot of bands that either were on major labels or gotten signed to major labels and now had money behind them. I think that Soul Asylum might have been Warner, but Grave Dancers Union was their first major label release after, Nirvana and the Seattle explosion. So the lead single was Somebody to Shove, which is a great song. It had gotten lots of promotion. And they had a song called Black Gold. It was also more of a rockin' song. This was the ballad song. And it has, I think it was Trent Reznor once that was referring to certain music videos, but Runaway Train fits the bill that the video becomes an important work in a medium in which there aren't many important works. You could count like really important music videos on 10 fingers, like Johnny Cash's take on Hurt and Thriller. And I have to say that because of what it is responsible for, Runaway Train has to be an important video. So
Yeah, for sure. This video, I mean, it's weird that they have pop culturally everything about them goes back to this video now, that they made for Runaway Train, which Tony Kaye is the director of it. He directed, for those of you who watch movies, American History X. He directed and shot that movie, and he also worked with Roger Waters, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Johnny Cash is mentioned. So yeah, so this became this, like, this is a thing where this song becomes and video becomes like bigger than them, right? Like,
yeah,
this is not indicative of like everything they are, but this is like people know Runaway Train, they know the video, and then they might know Soul Asylum. Is that fair to say with that? If they're a general, not the peruser type person, it's kind of weird that way, but.
And it is something we talked about in the Proclaimers episode with the people think that they're a one-hit wonder because they're trained.
Yeah.
And they had many songs and albums that sold well, and many other songs after this, like Misery and Just Like Anyone and so forth. They were a vital band doing lots of stuff.
Right. I think they were the band that I think like a record company, oh man, that next album is gonna explode. Like people are gonna be, and it was like, oh no, the general populace just liked them for 1 second. That was the thing. Like, because I remember ads for their follow up being like all over TV and all this stuff and coming out, and then just like,
yeah,
kind of
Let Your Dim Light Shine was the name of that album. It had Misery and Just Like Anyone on it, and it's a very good record. There's lots of good stuff. I saw them tour on that, and they're a great live band. I mean, if you came out of Minneapolis at that period, you were a great live band. None of them sucked. I mean, that they cut their teeth on that scene.
Gotcha.
And Dave Pirner, the lead singer, songwriter, etc. Pirner is a good writer, and I think that even divorced of this particular video, the song probably would have been a hit because it's a very good song, and he intended it as a song about a relationship that has fallen apart, but because it had Runaway in it, it lent itself to the concept.
Yeah, and the concept overtakes it because then it becomes this like striving mission of importance. Like oh, they're an activist band. They really care about this, that type of thing. And the video was really effective. I remember the video was effective to me back in the day. I was 11 years old seeing it, and I was like, oh, it kind of spooked me, and I felt bad and all this stuff. Like, these kids are, what's going on? But because we'll talk about the video here. It is the Missing Children video. So maybe you don't know the song, but you remember, what was that video with all the missing kids? It's this one, where it's like throughout. There's a story to the video, but it also it's vignettes. But in the middle of it, it plays these like shows pictures, and then says these kids have been missing since and their name, and in between there's these little vignettes of runaways with like having to do with prostitution, fighting at home, kind of things, some really odd stuff. But there was different versions of the video made, and they tried to like localize and regionalize them to show kids that were closer in the area missing. There was a UK edition of the video, all sorts of different things. There's one with like narration and stuff. Yeah.
There's a version with Dave Perner giving an intro and explaining what the concept is.
Yeah.
And he also did PSAs for the Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and that played the song in the commercials. So it became, inextricably linked with, missing kids. Just beyond that. And weirdly, which, Dave Perner was kind of a quasi celebrity on the back of this. I mean, he had a very distinctive look. He dated Winona Ryder for some time in the middle of the 90s, like during her Reality Bites era, and so he was visible. He was like in paparazzi photos, and he joined the when Thurston Moore assembled the kind of alt rock all stars to be the Beatles for the movie Backbeat, like the guys playing the Beatles. Perner was the guy that they recruited to sing the Paul McCartney songs. It was Dave Grohl was on drums. Don Fleming from Gumball was a guitarist with Thurston Moore. Mike Mills from REM was the bass player, and Greg Dully from Afghan Wigs sang John Lennon's stuff. But Dave Perner from Soul Asylum was right there singing McCartney's stuff with these other guys. So he was a big personality in this stretch of time.
Yeah,
he would be seen with Winona and recruited for those kind of projects.
I always thought, to me, in my eye, he always kind of looked like the alternative answer to like Axl Rose visually. Like he kind of
he had that hair.
He had that hair, facially kind of like, oh, it's like this little cousin or something. But it kind of reminded me of that. But he was notable. Like I couldn't tell you any other member of that band, but that lead singer's like, oh yeah, Soul Asylum guy. And he was focused on this video a lot too, which so the vignettes, there's a child witnessing a grandfather beating and eventually killing a grandmother, flees in fear. Second one is a teenage girl pimped as a prostitute, and it's purchased by the gold man who from the first vignette.
Right.
And then there's some nasty stuff with that. The hospital scene, small baby gets snatched in one of them, and that's kind of with the things playing in there. There's children playing shown throughout this because it's kids, and it's kind of like a reverse, like trying to make it's creepy because it's happy stuff with kids, but this is a dark subject matter. And
it's you mentioned the chart placements and the sales and the Grammy and everything, but it was a staggeringly big piece of popular culture.
There was parodies of it too, weren't there?
And it didn't go away. It hung around on the charts and on MTV for months and months. MTV was not quick to pull it or take it out of rotation because, as you said, they would put other pictures of kids in it, so it would be like fresh versions of it. And sometimes they'd even announce, hey, there's an updated version of Runaway Train running now, and check in with it. And I don't remember, I think you said that you had stats on how many kids were actually found on account of
so I want to go with this because this is kind of like a show that was popular at this time that has placed in the top 10 a couple times in the summer of 93 at 30 is Unsolved Mysteries, which was one of my favorite shows back in the day when I was a kid. It used to freak me out, and I just loved that. I apparently loved that thrill of being scared from Unsolved Mysteries and going to bed or something later that night and having it on my brain and thinking of it. So when I was going through and I was researching it, I found like there's like updates, like Unsolved Mysteries. When you watch a rerun of something, it'd be like update, and you're like, it's like bum 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 bum, and you're like, oh god, please, let's like don't let him still be out there. Because whenever you watch a rerun, because here I'll share something with viewers. When I'm editing or I'm writing, sometimes my audio ambiance, a lot of times Pluto TV. Which channels on Pluto TV, you ask? Well, there's the Doctor Who channel, of course. You all know that. There's the Dark Shadows channel. That's there too. Mystery Science Theater 3000 sometimes, but a lot of times Unsolved Mysteries is the channel. And it's always like you get to the end and you're like, please update, please update. Oh no, guy's still out there on the loose or something like that. So when I read these resolved cases, it plays like those updates on Unsolved Mysteries. So
update.
26 missing children were found after being featured in the video. So if you remember, in the US, there were 36, I think I said, kids that were shown in these videos across the different versions. 36. So they found, there's only 10 unaccounted for. But it's not all like happy. So guitarist Dan Murphy stated in an interview in 2006 that many of them ended in tragedies. Like he says, some weren't the best scenarios. I met a fireman on the East Coast whose daughter was in the end of the video, and he'd been in a bitter custody battle with his wife over her. It turned out the girl hadn't run away, but was killed and buried in her backyard by her mother. And then on tour, another girl told us laughingly, "You ruined my life," because she saw herself on the video at her boyfriend's house, and it led to her being forced back into a bad home situation.
Yeah, which makes you wonder how the kids were selected. For the video. Like, obviously this is 1993. You don't have the comprehensiveness of the internet now, where you can vet this stuff a lot harder.
And also like DNA testing is not. So if there's like a murderer trying to find some, DNA testing is not quite used yet, or like legitimate research tool.
This is when compared to the OJ trial, because people didn't understand what DNA testing was for the Simpson trial, but by the time the CSI is running at the beginning of the next decade, they understand it now.
Right. That's true. So in the UK, Mark Bartley, Runaway, went missing in 1992. He was recognized in the video by a man who knew Bartley was staying in a tenant's house below them, but was unaware of his missing status. By the time police arrived, Bartley and the man he was living with were gone. It is unknown what happened to him after this. Curtis Hunsinger, who was featured in the U.S. video, was located deceased in 2008. His convicted killer, Stephen Daniel Hash, pleaded guilty to manslaughter and in 2009 was sentenced to 11 years in Folsom State Prison. Andrea Bowman was also featured in the U.S. video. Her adopted father, Dennis Bowman, confessed to her murder in February 2020, so just 3 years ago. Her remains were located later that month and positively identified via DNA testing in May 2020. Also serving 2 life sentences for another 1980 murder, he was sentenced to an additional 35 to 50 years for Andrea's. The last image in all 3 U.S. versions of the video is that of Thomas Dean Gibson, who disappeared from Douglas County, Oregon in 1991 at the age of 2. He's still missing as of February 2021. Age progressed photos of him at age 18 and 21 were released in 2009 and 2012, respectively, by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Thomas's father, Larry Gibson, a former deputy sheriff, was convicted of second-degree manslaughter after prosecutors alleged that he accidentally killed Thomas when he shot at a stray cat in his front yard, even though no remains were ever found. Larry maintains his innocence and claims to have worked on finding Thomas since being released from prison in 1996. This case was explored on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. I'm sorry, that's probably bad to clap about that. Just the show.
Bring it all together.
So here's one of the craziest. The version shown in Australia showed a number of young backpacking tourists whose families were looking for them. Many of those shown in the Australian version were confirmed victims of serial killer Ivan Milat, who was arrested in 1994, not long after the Australian film clip was released. So so there was a bunch of them in Australia that were like, all serial killers. Like, that guy probably saw that video and was like, shut! Fuck Soul Asylum!
Well, yeah, that's got to be kind of a heavy thing for the band. Obviously, they can't play shows without playing the song. But this association for them has to be heavy.
Yeah.
And maybe they're in a place artistically where it's like the song is, they've figured it out, right? I mean, they've been playing for so long, and you see bands talk about this. Dave Grohl was talking recently about making a set list, like how freaking hard it is for the Foo Fighters to make a set list, because he said, we've got kind of like 10 songs that people want to hear that they'll kind of like riot if we don't play, like, Everlong and All My Life and stuff. So we got to do that. And then there's usually like a cover or two or something like that we do to amuse ourselves, or a deep cut. And then there's got to be the stuff from the newer record. And then, like, what are the middling songs that, and he's like, it's a real, like, pain in the ass. But he knows that there's, like, Everlong, and certain ones are never going to come out of the set list.
Right.
Your Soul Asylum, Runaway Train's never going to come out of the set list.
No.
But it's got to be a drag,
Right.
At a certain point. It's like, and, do you finish? Because it's kind of a down song to finish. Like, where do you put Runaway Train in your set if you're Soul Asylum? Especially when they have so many up songs.
Either the first encore song, or like the setup for the final and the regular set. Like, I don't know.
I don't properly remember where it was, in the set when I saw them. I know that I know that when I saw them, they played String of Pearls from Dim Light Shine Last. But so it was probably near that. It was probably near the end. But yeah. it's heavy. It's a heavy bit of business to deal with, especially if you have all those associations that you carry with you. Like, we found lots of kids in Australia, but they were victims of a serial killer. We found, and what do you do, right?
Yeah. So Soul Asylum's most recent show, on July 21st in San Jose, California, they played 17 songs, and it was in the 13 slot.
Gotcha. So you get, what are the last three? Now I have to
the last three is Music in the Park of 2023, so it might have been a festival. The last four songs were Closer to the Stairs, 99%, Lately, and April Fool.
Okay, so kind of like an up down.
Yeah, up down. So they played Summerfest in Milwaukee, and they had it earlier in the set. They had it at the, like, around the middle point at the 8th spot. They seem to only be playing festivals, and it's somewhere in the middle of the set. So it's either the beginning of the middle, the end of the middle, in the middle. They played Carb Day this year.
Oh, that's right, they did.
Yep, it was in the 11th spot of 14 songs. So here's a regular show from no, it's not. Maybe they opened for somebody. It was the second to last song, with Just Like Anyone being the closer.
That's a hell of a closer for band. Very upbeat, like rocking song. Claire Danes was in the video for that.
Okay. Okay, so here's a regular show where they're obviously the headliners back in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. It's in the middle of the set.
Yeah. So they've kind of figured it out, right? Like, based on the audience that they're playing. If they're playing like their audience, they kind of throw it in the middle. If they're playing like the festival crowd, it's tucked near the end to let you know that show's almost over, right?
Yeah. Right.
Kind of thing. The science of set lists.
All good.
But
I do love, there's that, have you seen the not his best concert doc, but the Shine a Light, the Scorsese one with the Rolling
Oh yeah,
Stones, and he sits helping Mick Jagger write the set list. Like I love that scene.
yeah. The only Scorsese movie that doesn't have "Gimme Shelter" in it.
Right. That's true. That's funny. That
Yeah,
is funny.
but that again with the Stones more than Soul Asylum, and like how the hell do you make a set list?
Like, I mean, if you're, especially if you're not doing like a multi-night stop,
Right.
like, yeah, there's, I mean, I remember like it's funny because so Pearl Jam back like early 2010s or so, they did like a 3-night stop in Philadelphia or something,
Mhm.
and it was just amazing what they played over 3 nights. Like, there was no repeat. I think there was very minimal repeats and stuff. And I saw a guy who only went to like 1 night, and he was like bitching about it. It was like, he's like, they didn't play the hits, man. They didn't play. I'm like, you saw incredible stuff, dude, that they don't play very often, or it's hard. It's like, what are you doing? Like, you don't understand Pearl Jam then what, like you were just the casual guy going to the show, but it's a 3-night stop. Like,
Yeah,
like, I don't
but
know.
they have been since 1993 or so, doggedly, like almost dogmatically and doggedly doing the opposite of what their audience wants them to do.
Yeah.
Like I was just reading something recently that had to do with the Dave Abercrombie, how you say it, the drummer that should have been inducted with them in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh,
but
yeah.
that whole story. But he related a story in an interview about producer Brendan O'Brien saying, talking about Daughter,
Mm-hmm.
which I believe is on
Versus.
yeah, and about how it was a good lead single. And he said as soon as he said that, like Eddie and Jeff, like their heads just dropped. And he's like, why is it a bad thing to say something's a good lead single? We're gonna have a goddamn lead single.
Yeah, we have a marketing plan regardless of what you guys like.
Yeah, and it's like it was just one of those things. They're so doggedly like, not that we'll take the millions of dollars from the albums and the tours and stuff, but we don't want to look like we're trying.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, their freaking plan here was terrible with the tour, like getting tickets for that, where they're like, we're gonna go on Live Nation, but we've got a way to combat the problem, and it only made it worse. Like,
Yeah,
if you like, it is this lottery system with a number. It's like, if you really want to get tickets, get the hell online when it goes on sale. That's all you can do.
yeah,
Like, you shouldn't, like, if it's that important to you, make the time to buy the tickets. Like, we live in a we live in a society. Well, we live in a world where it's not like I gotta call in sick for work to go buy tickets to
yeah.
somewhere. Like, you can take 5 minutes, pull out your phone, get the tickets. Like,
Yeah, but isn't it so funny that in a year where there's been all these ticket disasters, from Springsteen to Taylor Swift, which wasn't her fault, to
yeah,
Pearl Jam, that it was The Cure, it was Robert Smith, like chastising Ticketmaster in public, that
right,
fixed their tour so that they didn't have the problems that
yeah,
anyone else did. All he had to do was speak up. He's like, the charges are ridiculous. You're making it so people can't see the show. Fix this shit.
mhm,
And they did. So obviously it can be fixed. But
right,
the Cure got, I mean, hell, it was something like the average ticket price dropped by 10 or more bucks, and they still made the most money they've ever made in their
mhm,
career on
yeah,
that tour. It's hilarious. But now, going with Soul Asylum, they're still obviously out there playing. This is 20 years hence, 30 years hence, I mean, and they're still playing. They're still a vital band, making records, drawing crowds, participating in festivals and stuff. They're more so than acts that have come since.
right.
So I don't know, did this song help keep them in the consciousness? Yeah, I'm sure it did, because this song in a way never went away. It's always on alternative or classic rock
Right.
station. You find it.
WTTS plays it regularly.
Yep, you find it in your grocery store.
Yeah, finding your grocery store. I mean, it's always someone's always ponying up to add it to a TV show or a movie or something like that. Like it's always there. It's always a notable footnote in the wave of 90s music, the wave of like Alternative Nation, like all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like always going to be there. So
I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, and I myself am not through the second season, but with respect to deployment of 90s music, Yellow Jackets time. I'm sort of surprised this hasn't turned up yet, but Brandon, have you watched it?
No, I have not. It's been highly recommended to me, but I have not caught up with Yellow Jackets.
I'll throw my voice on that too. But in terms of their use of music of the era, it's pretty great. And so, it's one of those things where I would not be surprised, but they've got a pretty amazing mix of stuff.
That's right. Yeah, I've heard that for sure.
So yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised to see this continue to show up in soundtracks and things that are trying to strike a era specific note, especially since we're in a good influx of people probably doing 90s nostalgia movies.
Yeah.
Like, we're probably in that groove pretty soon.
Yep. Whenever Stranger Things gets its final season going, that's going to be the end of the 80s stuff, and we'll be well into 90s nostalgia.
Yeah, I think it's already started a little bit with some fashion stuff and everything. I've noticed flannel and tights under shorts and stuff creeping back into the all the kids have Chucks.
Yep. They're not comfortable.
Never were, man.
Never were. I would like my pants back, my baggier jeans with the slight bell bottoms on them.
Oh,
I love those. I like the little stripes down the side stuff. Yeah, there we go. I promise not to wear a wallet chain again, though. I won't do that.
No swingers era for
no. Oh my gosh, swingers. Oh gosh, I will. That is like if people. I'm off topic, but that's fine. But if people, I can tell you a movie that really nails the Los Angeles experience, living there and trying to work in the entertainment industry. Swingers has it down. Like that was very close to what I like life I was living there. I was like, it's oddly specific, and it checks out. And I kind of lived around those neighborhoods too. But yeah, crazy. But that's a story for another day when I do a Swingers episode. Summer of what, 95? Was that Swingers? Did that come?
95, yeah. 95 or 96?
95, 96. It might have been 96. Yep. Summer of 96. So when that happens, I'll be all about the Swingers. So,
yeah.
All right. Troy, that wraps you up for the summer of 93 at 30. Happy to have you back for another run at this series. Always like your intellect, and you were here for 3 of them. So very, very awesome. So where can people keep up with you until your inevitable return to this show?
I'm executive editor at the Saturday Evening Post, so SaturdayEveningPost.com, and you can find me on various strata of social media, usually at Troy Brownfield. And please check out Tidal Wave Productions' upcoming comic book miniseries, Legend of Isis: The New Kingdom, which I am writer on. So,
all right, cool. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Brandon4KHD UHD. Written work on whysoblue.com. Come back Monday as Aaron, Scott, and I will be discussing Searching for Bobby Fischer, The Secret Garden, Hearts and Souls, and Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday, as the summer of 93 at 30 continues.
It's the summer of 93 at 30.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios, and no infringement is intended. The Summer of and News themes by Pres Maxson. Additional information on this and other episodes at thebrandonpetershow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail@thebrandonpetershow.com. The show is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.